Maya carried plates like they weighed nothing, smiled at customers who never looked her in the eye, and endured insults from people who thought her uniform made her invisible. For 3 years, she served the wealthy elite at Romano's finest location, never knowing that one signature on a marriage certificate would change everything. But when the owner's daughter decided to destroy her life over spilled coffee, Maya discovered that sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one no one expects. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Maya Rodriguez had perfected the art of being forgettable. At 26, she moved through Romano's Uptown like a shadow, refilling water glasses and clearing tables while the city's elite discussed their stock portfolios and vacation homes. The restaurant chain's flagship location attracted senators, CEOs, and old money families who treated the staff like living furniture. Every morning at 6, Maya would tie her dark hair into a tight bun, press her black uniform until it was spotless, and prepare to spend another day being nobody. She had learned that survival in this world meant keeping your head down, your voice quiet, and your opinions to yourself. The wealthy customers of Romano's didn't want personality from their servers. They wanted efficiency wrapped in invisibility. Romano's Uptown wasn't just any restaurant. It was where the city's power brokers came to make deals over $100 steaks, where political alliances were formed over vintage wine, and where people like Maya existed solely to facilitate their comfort. The mahogany-paneled dining room with its crystal chandeliers and imported marble floors had witnessed more million-dollar handshakes than most boardrooms. Maya had her reasons for staying in this suffocating environment. Her younger brother Jake was brilliant, the first person in their family to get accepted to medical school. But brilliance didn't pay tuition bills. Their parents had died in a car accident when Maya was 21, leaving her to raise Jake and somehow fund his education. The tips at Romano's were good enough to keep Jake in school, but barely. Every night, Maya would count her earnings, calculating how many more months of degradation she could endure before Jake graduated. She had already postponed her own college dreams indefinitely. Her acceptance letter to art school still sat in her dresser drawer, a reminder of the life she had sacrificed for her brother's future. That's how she had ended up married to Daniel Chen, though the marriage existed only on paper and in the depths of legal documents that nobody would ever think to examine. 4 months ago, Maya had been cleaning the private dining room when she overheard Daniel on a frantic phone call with his attorney. His father's will contained an antiquated clause requiring marriage before his 30th birthday to inherit the family's restaurant empire, and that birthday was rapidly approaching. Daniel Chen was the heir to Chen Hospitality Group, an empire that included Romano's and 15 other high-end restaurant chains across the country. He was also, by all accounts, a decent man trapped in an impossible situation. When Maya had quietly offered him a solution that evening, he had stared at her for a full minute before asking if she was serious. The arrangement was purely practical. He needed a wife on paper to satisfy his father's will. She needed money to keep Jake in medical school. They would marry quietly, maintain separate lives, and divorce after 1 year. Daniel would transfer enough money to cover Jake's remaining tuition immediately. No one would ever know about their arrangement. The courthouse wedding had taken 20 minutes. Daniel had been kind but professional, treating the ceremony like a business merger. He had transferred the money that same afternoon, then left for an extended business trip to oversee the company's West Coast operations. They had spoken perhaps 3 times since then, brief phone calls about tax documents and legal formalities. Maya had returned to her job at Romano's Uptown the next day, and nothing had changed. She was still invisible, still just another server in a black uniform. The irony that she was technically married to the man who owned the restaurant where she scrubbed floors and endured abuse wasn't lost on her, but it felt more like a cruel joke than a source of power. The evening that changed everything started like any other Friday night at Romano's. Maya arrived early to help with the setup for what the management called VIP night, when the restaurant's most important clients received special treatment and premium service. The main dining room had been arranged with extra attention to detail, each table set with the finest china and crystal glasses that caught the light from the massive chandelier overhead. Isabella Romano, the owner's daughter and the restaurant's operations manager, swept through the dining room like a queen inspecting her domain. At 28, Isabella had never worked a day outside her father's restaurants. but she commanded them with the entitled authority of someone who had never been told no. She was beautiful in the way that expensive cosmetics and personal trainers could make anyone beautiful, but her personality revealed itself in how she treated people she considered beneath her. Maya had learned to be extra careful around Isabella, who had a talent for finding fault with everything and ensuring that someone paid dearly for even minor mistakes. Isabella's father might own Romano's, but she ran the day-to-day operations with an iron fist wrapped in designer clothes. Maya was polishing wine glasses behind the bar when Isabella's voice cut through the pre-dinner preparation buzz. The sound made every server in earshot freeze, a learned response to that particular tone that usually preceded someone's very bad day. "Maya," Isabella called, her heels clicking against the marble floor as she approached. "Table 12 needs to be reset completely. The water glasses have spots." Maya glanced at table 12, which she had set herself less than an hour ago with spotless glasses. She walked over to inspect the table, running her finger along the rim of each glass. They were perfect, without a single water spot or fingerprint. "Miss Romano, these glasses appear to be clean," Maya said carefully, keeping her voice neutral and respectful. Isabella's eyes flashed with something dangerous. "Are you questioning my judgment?" "Not at all, miss. I'm just trying to understand what needs to be corrected." "What needs to be corrected is your attitude," Isabella snapped, loud enough that other staff members turned to watch. "I said the glasses have spots, which means they have spots. Reset the entire table. Now." Maya nodded and began collecting the perfectly clean glasses, her face burning with embarrassment as her coworkers avoided eye contact. She had learned long ago that fighting back only made things worse, especially when Isabella was in one of her moods. The key to survival was compliance, no matter how unreasonable the demands. But Isabella wasn't finished. As Maya carefully removed each glass, Isabella continued her verbal assault. "This is exactly the kind of careless work that reflects poorly on our entire establishment. Do you understand that our reputation depends on attention to detail?" "Yes, miss," Maya replied quietly, focusing on her task. "I'm beginning to wonder if you're capable of maintaining our standards. Perhaps you'd be better suited to work at one of those chain restaurants where mediocrity is acceptable." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Maya needed this job, needed the income to support Jake through his final year of medical school. She couldn't afford to lose her position over clean glasses and wounded pride. The dinner service began with its usual controlled chaos. Maya moved between her assigned tables with practiced efficiency, taking orders from politicians discussing upcoming legislation and business executives planning corporate acquisitions. She had become skilled at being present, but unnoticed, there when needed but invisible when conversations turned sensitive. That's when she first encountered Vivian Ashford that evening. Vivian was new to Romano's regular clientele, but her presence commanded immediate attention. She was a woman in her early 40s with platinum blonde hair and the kind of confidence that came from never having to check her bank balance. Her designer dress probably cost more than Maya made in 3 months, and she moved through the restaurant like she owned not just the building but everyone in it. Within minutes of being seated at Maya's station, Vivian had established herself as a problem customer. Her water wasn't cold enough. The bread basket contained rolls that were obviously day-old. The temperature in the dining room was absolutely arctic. Each complaint was delivered with the expectation that Maya would somehow solve problems that were either imaginary or completely beyond her control. Maya responded to each criticism with professional courtesy, replacing Vivian's water with fresh ice, bringing a new bread basket, and adjusting the nearby thermostat. But nothing seemed to satisfy Vivian, who appeared to view Maya's attempts at service as personal affronts to her dignity. "This is completely unacceptable," Vivian announced during her third complaint of the evening. "I specifically asked for my salad to be prepared without onions, and there are clearly onions in this dish." Maya looked at the salad, which contained no onions whatsoever. The greens, tomatoes, and croutons were exactly as ordered, without a single piece of onion visible anywhere in the bowl. "Ma'am, I don't see any onions in your salad," Maya said gently. "Would you like me to have the chef prepare a fresh one?" Vivian's voice rose to a level that attracted attention from nearby tables. "Are you calling me a liar?" Do you think I don't know what onions look like? Of course not, ma'am. I'm simply trying to help resolve the situation. The situation is that your service is completely inadequate, and your attitude is becoming increasingly disrespectful. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Maya felt the familiar flush of humiliation as other diners turned to stare at the commotion. She could see Isabella Romano watching from across the room, her expression suggesting that Maya was somehow responsible for creating this scene. "I apologize if I've done anything to upset you," Maya said, keeping her voice steady despite the embarrassment. "Let me get the manager to assist you." "Don't you dare walk away from me," Vivian snapped. "I'm not finished with you yet." But Maya was already moving toward Isabella's position near the kitchen, hoping that management intervention might diffuse the situation before it escalated further. She had learned that angry customers sometimes responded better to authority figures than to the servers they viewed as beneath their consideration. Isabella listened to Maya's brief explanation with obvious annoyance, as if the problem was somehow Maya's fault, rather than a difficult customer's unreasonable behavior. Without asking for details or attempting to understand what had actually happened, Isabella marched toward Vivian's table with Maya trailing reluctantly behind. "Mrs. Ashford, I understand there's been some confusion with your order," Isabella said, switching instantly to the obsequious tone she reserved for wealthy customers. "Please allow me to personally ensure that everything is corrected to your satisfaction." Vivian launched into a dramatic recitation of her grievances, embellishing each minor issue into a major catastrophe. According to her version of events, Maya had been rude, dismissive, and completely incompetent from the moment she had been seated. The salad incident had been transformed into a deliberate act of defiance, as if Maya had personally sneaked onions into the dish just to spite her. Throughout Vivian's performance, Maya stood silently beside the table, watching Isabella's expression grow increasingly dark. She knew that defending herself would only make things worse, but staying silent felt like accepting responsibility for problems she hadn't created. "This is absolutely unacceptable," Isabella declared when Vivian finished her monologue. "Maya, apologize to Mrs. Ashford immediately." Maya looked at Vivian, whose satisfied smile suggested she was enjoying the power dynamic immensely. "I apologize for any inconvenience, Mrs. Ashford." "That's not sufficient," Vivian said, her voice carrying across the dining room. "This kind of treatment is exactly why people of quality avoid places that hire unqualified staff." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. Around them, other diners had stopped their conversations to watch the scene unfold. Some had their phones out, probably recording what they saw as entertainment. Maya felt like an animal in a zoo, something to be observed and judged by people who had never walked in her shoes. Isabella's face was flushed with anger, but Maya could tell that the fury was directed at her rather than at the customer who was creating the disturbance. "Maya, you're clearly having difficulty providing appropriate service this evening. Perhaps you should take some time to reflect on your performance." The dismissal was clear, even if it wasn't explicitly stated. Maya was being sent home early, which meant losing a full night's tips during one of the restaurant's busiest periods. The financial impact would force her to stretch her grocery budget for the next week. But as Maya turned to leave, Vivian's voice stopped her cold. "That's it? You're just going to let her walk away? This kind of disrespect demands serious consequences." Isabella looked between Maya and Vivian, clearly calculating which option would cause less damage to the restaurant's reputation. The answer was obvious. Maya was replaceable. Wealthy customers were not. "You're right, Mrs. Ashford. Maya, collect your things. Your employment here is terminated." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Maya felt the blood drain from her face as the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. Fired. She had just lost the job that paid for Jake's medical school, the job that kept them both housed and fed. "Please," Maya whispered, her professional composure finally cracking. "I need this job. I haven't done anything wrong." But Isabella had already turned away, focusing her attention on placating Vivian with offers of complimentary meals and personal apologies. Maya might as well have been invisible again. Except now she was invisible and unemployed. Maya walked through the dining room in a daze, aware that every eye was on her but unable to meet anyone's gaze. The whispered conversations followed her to the staff area, where she mechanically collected her purse and jacket from her locker, Her hands were shaking as she untied her apron for the last time. "Maya, wait," called Jessica, one of the other servers. "This is insane." Everyone knows Vivian was completely out of line. "It doesn't matter," Maya replied numbly. "It's done." As she walked toward the restaurant's exit, Maya passed the bar where Daniel Chen sat alone, nursing a glass of wine and reviewing documents on his tablet. He looked up as she approached, and for a moment, their eyes met. He was her husband, at least on paper, but he might as well have been a stranger. Their arrangement had never included emotional support or personal intervention. Daniel's expression showed mild curiosity at seeing her leaving early, but he returned to his work without comment. Maya continued toward the door, carrying the weight of her failure and the knowledge that everything she had worked for was about to collapse. Outside Romano's Uptown, the city hummed with its usual Friday night energy. People walked past in expensive clothes, heading to theaters and clubs, living lives that seemed impossibly glamorous compared to Maya's current situation. She stood on the sidewalk for several minutes, trying to process what had just happened and figure out what she was going to tell Jake. Her phone buzzed with a text message from her brother. "How was work? Still planning to visit this weekend?" Maya stared at the message, unable to formulate a response that wouldn't shatter Jake's world along with her own. He was so close to graduation, so close to becoming the doctor he had always dreamed of being. And now, because of spilled imaginary onions and a customer's cruelty, that dream was in jeopardy. Maya walked to the bus stop, her mind racing through possibilities and coming up empty. She had some savings, but not enough to cover Jake's remaining tuition and their living expenses. She could look for another job, but nothing would pay as well as Romano's, and she had no references from her 3 years of employment there. As the bus carried her home to her small apartment, Maya stared out the window at the city lights and wondered how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. She had played by their rules, accepted their treatment, and kept her head down just like she was supposed to. But in the end, none of that had mattered. The powerful had spoken, and Maya Rodriguez had been erased from their world as easily as wiping a table clean. But what Maya didn't know was that someone had been watching the entire scene unfold. Someone who had seen Vivian's performance and Isabella's cruel dismissal. Someone who was about to make a series of phone calls that would change everything. The real story was just beginning. Maya sat on her couch the next morning, staring at her phone screen showing dozens of missed calls from Jake. She couldn't bring herself to answer, and explained that his tuition money had just evaporated along with her job. The apartment felt smaller somehow, as if the walls were closing in with each passing hour of unemployment. Then someone knocked on her door. Daniel Chen stood in the hallway, still wearing his expensive suit from the night before. His usually composed expression carried something Maya had never seen before. Fury. "We need to talk," he said quietly. Maya let him in, confused by his presence. Their arrangement had never included house calls or personal visits. Daniel had always maintained strict boundaries between their business relationship and their separate lives. "I saw what happened last night," Daniel began, his voice tight with controlled anger. "I watched that woman destroy you for her own entertainment, and I watched Isabella fire you for doing absolutely nothing wrong." Maya sank into her chair, the humiliation fresh and raw. "It doesn't matter now. It's done." "No, it's not done." Daniel moved to face her directly. "Maya, do you understand who you're married to? Do you understand what I can do?" She looked at him with tired eyes. "It's just a paper marriage, Daniel. We both know that." "Maybe it started that way." His voice softened slightly. "But somewhere in these past 4 months, watching you work, seeing how you carry yourself with dignity, even when people treat you terribly, it became something else for me." Maya's breath caught. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that watching someone humiliate my wife while I sat there doing nothing was the worst feeling I've ever experienced. And I'm saying that I'm going to fix this." Daniel pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "Mr. Romano? This is Daniel Chen. I need to schedule a meeting for this morning. Something urgent has come up regarding my investment in your restaurant chain." Maya stared at him in shock. "Investment?" Daniel had never mentioned any business relationship with Romano's beyond being a customer. After hanging up, Daniel turned back to Maya. I've been quietly acquiring shares in Romano's for the past year. As of yesterday morning, I own 42% of the company. By tomorrow, I'll own 51%. You're buying Romano's? Maya whispered. I'm buying Romano's, Daniel confirmed. And the first order of business will be addressing the management problems that led to last night's incident. 3 hours later, Maya found herself in the conference room at Romano's corporate headquarters. Sitting beside Daniel as Romano's board of directors filed in for an emergency meeting. Mr. Romano himself looked confused and slightly panicked, clearly unaware of what had prompted this sudden gathering. Isabella Romano entered last, her face pale when she spotted Maya. The realization that something significant was happening began to dawn on her, though she clearly hadn't connected all the pieces yet. Daniel stood at the head of the conference table, his presence commanding immediate attention. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for accommodating this urgent meeting. I'm here to discuss the future of Romano's and some serious concerns about current management practices. He activated the room's presentation screen, which displayed a detailed financial analysis of Romano's performance over the past 2 years. As you can see, while Romano's maintains its reputation, profitability has declined steadily, customer complaints have increased, staff turnover has reached critical levels. Mr. Romano shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Chen, while we appreciate your investment in our company, I'm not sure what this has to do with... Last night, I witnessed a perfect example of the management failures that are destroying this company's foundation, Daniel interrupted. I watched a valued employee with 3 years of exemplary service get fired for refusing to accept abuse from a customer. Isabella's face went white. Mr. Chen, I don't think you understand the full situation. I understand perfectly. Daniel's voice cut through her attempted explanation. I watched Vivian Ashford create a scene over imaginary problems. I watched you enable her behavior and then fire an innocent employee to appease a customer who was clearly in the wrong. Daniel clicked to the next slide, which showed security footage from the restaurant's cameras. The silent video clearly displayed the entire incident, from Vivian's increasingly aggressive behavior to Maya's professional responses to Isabella's dismissal. This footage tells a very different story than the one Mrs. Ashford provided, Daniel continued. It shows an employee attempting to provide excellent service to a customer who was determined to cause problems. Mr. Romano looked at his daughter with growing concern. Isabella, is this accurate? Isabella's composure cracked completely. She was being disrespectful. She questioned my authority in front of customers. She asked for clarification about glasses that were already clean, Daniel corrected. She tried to de-escalate a situation with an unreasonable customer. She maintained professionalism, even while being verbally abused. Daniel advanced to another slide showing employee records. Maya Rodriguez has received commendations from customers, perfect attendance, and 0 legitimate complaints in 3 years of employment. Meanwhile, under Isabella's management, Romano's Uptown has lost 12 experienced servers in the past 6 months alone. The board members began murmuring among themselves, clearly disturbed by the information being presented. Maya sat quietly, still processing the surreal experience of watching her husband defend her in a corporate boardroom. The Romano family has built an excellent reputation over decades, Daniel continued. But recent management decisions are destroying that legacy. Employees who feel unsafe and unsupported provide poor service. Customers who witness staff being treated badly associate that treatment with your brand. Mr. Romano cleared his throat. What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Chen? I'm proposing immediate changes to protect both your employees and your reputation. Starting with Maya's reinstatement and Isabella's removal from operational management. Isabella shot to her feet. You can't do this. This is my family's restaurant. Actually, I can. Daniel's voice remained calm but firm. As of 1 hour ago, I completed the purchase of additional shares that give me controlling interest in this company. The Romano name stays on the door, but the operational decisions are now mine to make. The room fell silent. Maya felt like she was watching a movie rather than living through her own life. 24 hours ago, she had been fired and humiliated. Now her secret husband was buying the entire restaurant chain. Mr. Romano looked stunned. You bought out our other investors? I made them offers they couldn't refuse, Daniel confirmed. Romano's has tremendous potential, but it needs leadership that values both customers and employees. Daniel turned to address the full board. Maya Rodriguez will return to work with a promotion to training manager, overseeing service standards across all locations. Isabella Romano will transition to a consulting role focused on menu development, where her family knowledge can be valuable without direct staff management. Isabella's face was red with fury and humiliation. This is ridiculous. You're destroying everything we've built over one insignificant waitress. That insignificant waitress is my wife, Daniel said quietly. The words dropped into the silence like a bomb. Board members exchanged shocked glances. Isabella's mouth fell open. Mr. Romano blinked several times as if trying to process what he'd heard. Your wife? Mr. Romano finally managed. Maya and I have been married for 4 months, Daniel explained. We kept it private for personal reasons, but I won't stand by and watch her be treated as less than human because people don't know who she is. Daniel looked around the room at the stunned faces. Maya has chosen to work in service because she values honest work and supporting her family. That choice deserves respect, not contempt. Isabella found her voice. This is impossible. She's just a server. You're Daniel Chen. I'm a man who recognizes character and integrity when I see it, Daniel replied. Qualities that seem to be in short supply in current management. The meeting concluded with Isabella's resignation and Maya's official promotion. As the board members filed out in various states of shock, Mr. Romano approached Daniel and Maya personally. I owe you an apology, he said to Maya. And I owe you thanks, he added to Daniel. Isabella is my daughter, but she was destroying what my grandfather built. 6 months later, Maya stood in the renovated training center at Romano's headquarters, leading a workshop on customer service and employee dignity. The program she had developed was being implemented across all Romano's locations, focusing on treating both customers and staff with respect. The changes at Romano's had been dramatic. Employee turnover had dropped to nearly zero. Customer satisfaction scores had reached all-time highs. The company's stock price had increased by 30% since Daniel's acquisition. Isabella had actually thrived in her new role developing seasonal menus, away from staff management and customer interaction. Vivian Ashford had been quietly banned from all Romano's locations after her behavior that night was investigated and found to be part of a pattern of abusing service workers. Jake had graduated medical school with honors and was starting his residency at the city's most prestigious hospital. He still couldn't quite believe his sister was married to the man who owned half the city's finest restaurants. Maya's relationship with Daniel had evolved far beyond their original business arrangement. What had started as a practical solution had grown into genuine partnership and affection. They had moved in together the previous month, finally living as a real married couple. Do you ever regret it? Maya asked Daniel as they walked through Romano's Uptown during a surprise inspection visit. The restaurant ran smoothly now, with staff who seemed genuinely happy and customers who noticed the improved atmosphere. Regret what? Daniel replied, watching their employees work with pride and professionalism. Giving up your quiet life for a complicated wife who brings corporate drama. Daniel stopped walking and turned to face her. Maya, you didn't bring drama. You brought integrity into a world that had forgotten what it looked like. He gestured toward the dining room, where servers moved confidently and customers enjoyed their meals in an atmosphere of mutual respect. Look what you've built here. Look what you've changed. Maya smiled, remembering the woman who had once carried plates while feeling invisible. She was no longer invisible. She had found her voice, her power, and her purpose. Sometimes the most important person in the room is the one everyone overlooks, she said softly. Sometimes, Daniel agreed, taking her hand. And sometimes that person just needs someone else to help them see their own worth. Maya Rodriguez Chen had learned that respect wasn't something you had to earn through status or wealth. It was something you demanded by knowing your own value and refusing to accept anything less. The girl who had once been fired for refusing to accept abuse had become the woman who transformed an entire company's culture. And sometimes, that's exactly how the world changes. One person at a time, one stand at a time, one moment of refusing to be invisible. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.